A case could easily be made, my brothers and sisters, today that we are a lottery generation. We want to have pleasure. We love to gamble, even knowing that the odds are greatly against us. Is that right? Sad to say that even the lottery mentality has spilled over into the church. We are not afraid of the hazards and the pitfalls that have doomed other generations. Not only are we considered as a lottery generation, but we are also a generation of the Xbox. The Xbox, the box made by Microsoft. We are a generation of Sony PlayStations and the Wii game. We are texting and twiddling and tweedling, and then we are emailing, and we are just a generation that promises greatness but forgotten about the covenant of God. How terminal is our generation? Well, my brothers and sisters, if I could look back in the corridors of my mind, the words of God saying to us in 2 Chronicles 7:14 comes to mind, where God says to Solomon, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and will heal their land. Yes, my loved ones, this could well be known as a generation of me. It is the me generation. Everything is about self. Get all you can get. It's my way or the highway. If it feels good, do it. He or she who dies with the most toys wins. The concern of the old, where the church used to pray, seems to be absent. When the church used to have falling from the lips of prayer, let there be love that runs from heart to heart and breast to breast, has been replaced with an aggressive driving and road rage by backbiting and jostling for positions, and even a magazine that calls itself Self. Can I preach for a few minutes? We are a selfish generation. Today, many of our lives are being affected by crumbling values. Many people are being ripped apart under the stress because their basic fiber is made out of faulty material. This generation can easily be called the most self-absorbed, self-centered, self-complacent, selfish generation in the history of mankind. Today, like an automobile without brakes on a mountain road, the perplexity of parents are accelerating into the muddied minds of their children. Hal Lindsey says this generation of children and humanity has followed the Peter Pan to permissiveness to a never land which leads to nowhere. When one thinks about the condition of our world and the evil that lurks in every corner of it, one would wonder, is there any help? Is there any hope? Is there anything worth living with and for in this converted and corrupted generation? Can I preach for a few minutes? You see, my brothers and sisters, it is clear that humankind can live about 40 days without food, about 3 days without water, and about 8 minutes without air, but can only live 1 second without hope. Touch your neighbor and say, you need some hope. In this generation, this land of shaking and the world seemingly an uncomfortable, scary place, with a world filled with perverted idolatry, with the tolerance and perversive sexuality of humankind, one would wonder, is there any hope? Is there any good news? Can I preach for a minute? Is there any truth? Is there any sunshine on the horizon for a dark and dismal place? Is there any relief for the pals that have the pens and the pens that have the pals that writes the notes of hope and aspiration? Is there really any hope? Is there any hope for a problematic society falling down in its economical, suicidal, grave mentality of despair, destruction, and damage? Is there any hope for a generation that is hurting so bad until it covers it up with the toys of life? I have good news for somebody today. I got some good news. I need to tell you that there is some news from the printing press in glory. I need to tell you that there is a word from the Lord. I need to tell you, my brothers and sisters, that there is something good God has to say. Because if you allow me just to stand in the courtroom of the judges and see what justice has to say to defend the cause of humanity in the midst of his craziness, I hear the word of the Lord proclaiming in Acts, the 2nd chapter and the 17th verse. I'm trying to rush. In the last days, God said, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your young daughters and sons will prophesy. Young men will see visions. Old men will dream dreams. Even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days, and they will prophesy. I will show wonders in the heaven above and signs on earth below, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great glorious day of the Lord. And everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Touch your neighbor and say, that's good news. Yes, I come to tell you, my loved ones, there is some good information. I got a good podcast for you from the eternal glory of God that's housed in 1 Peter, the 2nd chapter and the 9th verse, that said, but you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a particular people, that you should show forth the praise of him who called you out of darkness into the marvelous light. Touch somebody and say, now that's some good news. This is a time for people to understand that the adversities and the economic downturns and the stains of life do not eradicate that this is a chosen generation. God has split open the heavens and poured out his spirit. This is a generation that God will come to know, and they will come to know God, and they will lift up praises unto our God, because God was good yesterday. He's good today, and he'll be good. Somebody hear me.